Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another tremendous weekend update. From very high above, all the insipid and puerile forms of Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Saturday. Wyoming has one of the most absurdly bizarre laws still on the books. In fact, there's only one other state that has a similar one, a statute that effectively tells a political party that it can't act as a political party, that it can't publicly support its own candidates during the most important election in the state. They can recruit people to their party, convince candidates to run, help register voters, hold campaign events, and espouse their platform, but they can't tell you who agrees with that platform. That, my friends, is a bridge way too far. Wyoming Statute 22-25-104. Basically, it says that a political party can't endorse its own candidates in the primary election. How stupid is that? Now, here is exactly what the statute says. It prohibits a political party from spending money, quote, directly or indirectly in the aid of the nomination of any one person as against another person for the same political party running in the primary election. Violating that law isn't just a regulatory matter. It carries criminal penalties of up to 6 months in jail and a $1,000 fine. You can go to jail for political speech. A constitutional act cannot be criminalized, yet this law does exactly that. It uses the power of the state to suppress an exercise of free speech. A private political organization can identify its principles, write a platform, recruit candidates, and encourage people to register with the party. But once multiple candidates for the same office enter the race, Wyoming law says the party itself has to keep its mouth shut. It can't spend its own money telling voters which of those candidates actually support the party platform. You know, the party platform that the party is legally allowed to create. Political parties are not government agencies. They are private, voluntary associations protected by the First Amendment. Like any other private organization, they possess the right to speak, associate, and advocate for the ideas and individuals they believe best represent their mission. The First Amendment was written to protect political speech, especially when it's inconvenient. Before the Revolutionary War, the British treated assemblies of 3 or more people as potentially unlawful if authorities decided they threatened the peace. You can only imagine how that always turned out. But that's exactly why the right to freely assemble is in the First Amendment in the first place. James Madison himself treated peaceable assembly as a fundamental natural right essential to political liberty and the ability to petition the government. Precisely the kind of activity British authorities had sought to control or suppress in the colonies. In practice, Wyoming's law is no different. It uses the power of the state to muzzle a private group's ability to communicate its own principles and its ability to say who follows those principles and who does not. It's that last part that the redcoats want to protect more than anything. And it's what this whole fight boils down to. Preventing the Republican Party from saying who actually follows the Republican Party platform and which candidate has never read it. Let me give you a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Gillette, specifically House District 3. Earl Collier is running against Annie Ziegenhorn. Earl has been on this program, and he told all of us that he supports the Republican Party platform 100%. So there's no question about him. But his opponent, Annie, that's a different story. Ziegenhorn filled out a survey put out by the Wyoming Family Alliance. Now, while this isn't put out by the Republican Party and it doesn't precisely follow the Republican Party platform, it's pretty illuminating. The first plank of the Republican Party platform is that we believe in life from conception until natural death, and government's job is to protect that right. Now, the Wyoming Family Alliance asked all of the candidates about protecting the value of human life. Ziegenhorn says she disagrees. On the question of informed consent of chemical abortion, she disagrees with that one, too. Honestly, if you call yourself a Republican, how can you disagree that all human life is precious? On protecting minors from explicit content, or should we have porn in libraries, she also disagrees with that one. If you're wondering, in the Republican Party platform, that one relates to planks 7, 8, and 9 under family values. And just one more while we're at it. Annie Ziegenhorn disagrees with the whole idea of parental rights. Now, she doesn't explain that. She just says that she disagrees. There are some other questions that the Wyoming Family Alliance asked, but the bottom line is it's pretty clear that Annie Ziegenhorn does not support the Republican Party platform. So why then can't the Republican Party say so? Because there's a law against it. So according to Wyoming law, you can identify however you want, and the rest of us just have to go along with it. And boy, do all of these redcoats get mad when you refer to them as a trans Republican. But actually, Wyoming law goes quite a bit further than that. It criminalizes free speech. Not only is there a statute that prevents the Republican Party from explaining who is a Republican and follows the platform and who is not, Wyoming law criminalizes free speech with the threat of jail and a fine. You cannot get much closer to what the British were doing pre-Revolutionary War than this. Yeah, redcoats, the original version. And I'll tell you more about them in just a second. But first, an absolutely obscene profit timeout. Cowboy State Politics is brought to you by Cowboy State Trailers. In Wyoming, we haul a lot of stuff, and most of it you need a trailer for. The best place to go is Cowboy State Trailers in Shoshone. They've got utility trailers, tilt decks, dump beds, gooseneck trailers from all the best brands. Nordtech, Iron Bull, North Star Trailers. Or, if you're not interested in hauling your stuff around and you just want to store it, they also sell old hickory sheds. Give them a call, 307-409-0396. That's Cowboy State Trailers, 320 Sagebrush Lane in Shoshone. And if you tell them that David sent you, they'll knock $250 off your bill.
I'm Karen Weber, and I'm running for House District 5 in Goshen County. We need to decrease the size and scope of government. Expenditures have increased 59% under Governor Gordon. We need to decrease residential property taxes because you cannot own your own home if you can be taxed out of it. In terms of the economy, right now, agriculture ranks below the media in the Cowboy State. Agriculture GDP has decreased 22% in the last 7 years, and that is unacceptable. It's very important for Goshen County that we support our agricultural producers. That's what I want to do as your next representative. I ask for your vote on August the 18th. Paid for by Weber for House District 5.
I know that it's about 1 billion degrees outside. But trust me, my friends, pretty soon that white crap is going to be flying around and all of your stuff is going to be stuck out in it. You could prevent that unfortunate circumstance simply by calling Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. They are the experts in metal building construction. They've been doing it longer than anybody else around, and they do a much better job of it. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Give them a call, or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com. Are you looking for a place to advertise your business? You should try the Open Range Record. Nobody is going to beat our advertising rates, and we'll tailor a package specifically for your business. The Open Range Record is quickly becoming one of the more well-read news outlets in the state. And if you want to get your message out, give us a try. Send me an email at editor@openrangerecord.com. And now, back to the program. this is how bizarre this entire situation is. Wyoming law ensures there is no scrutinizing of candidates in the primary election by the group that is best suited to evaluate them, the party itself. It doesn't make any sense that the grassroots organization that developed the party platform is legally barred from evaluating who is abiding by that platform. This law was clearly written by people who wanted to use the Republican brand but not abide by Republican principles, and certainly not be held accountable to them. If the Sierra Club can endorse candidates, if labor unions like the Wyoming Education Association can spend money supporting candidates, if chambers of commerce can publish scorecards, why can't a political party identify which candidates actually represent the principles of that party? At its core, this statute compels speech through silence. It compels a private political organization to remain silent during the very election where its voice is most relevant. In the end, political parties must tacitly agree that anyone who claims to be a Republican is, in fact, a Republican, and therefore follows the platform, a proposition that is patently absurd. The First Amendment exists precisely because government doesn't get to decide who gets to speak and who does not. The First Amendment specifically protects the speech that we disagree with. And when someone says something that is politically inconvenient, government does not get to keep them silent. Now, on the other hand, just because you can do a thing doesn't necessarily mean that you should. We are often told that you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's not true at all. You absolutely can, and it's protected by the First Amendment. But you are responsible for the repercussions of what happens after you yell fire in a crowded theater. Now, I'm not suggesting that making a political endorsement is in any way equivalent to causing a stampede. I am, however, appealing to the judicious use of that speech, that you should use it sparingly, just like the fire alarm that goes off too frequently. Eventually, it loses its effectiveness. So what I'm saying is, unless there are extenuating circumstances, I think the party should allow candidates to fight it out in the trenches, as it were. In one race this year, I think that the party's endorsements are absolutely appropriate. Eric Barlow has given the proverbial middle finger to the Republican Party platform. He made his own scorecard, which is ridiculous in and of itself, but he claims to have followed the Republican Party platform 100% of the time. I can give you vote after vote after vote, probably thousands of them, where Eric Barlow has voted exactly the opposite to the Republican Party platform. Without even digging into it, there are examples of where he's voted against the Republican Party platform, all 23 planks of it. Though not nearly as bad, Megan Felder also has a voting record that shows her not to be a conservative, and in many cases, not following the Republican Party platform either. Now, I'll give it to her. Over and over, she said on this program, in debates, and in other places, that she's going to govern conservatively. Okay, but her voting record says otherwise. By contrast, there's Brent Bean, who does not have a voting record. But by any measure that we have, he is a conservative. In the last 5 years, he's been on this program numerous times. On the Republican or redcoat meter, the needle has never moved off of conservative. So in the case of the Wyoming governor's race, I think the Republican Party's endorsement of Brent Bean for governor is absolutely appropriate. But I think that's where the endorsements should have stopped. Take, for example, the U.S. House race. There are several candidates who have made it abundantly clear that they're not really conservative and have actually been pretty hostile to the Wyoming Republican Party. Interesting that that's the nomination they're campaigning for, and yet they openly attack Wyoming Republicans. Bo Beitman and Kevin Christensen openly refused to fill out a Republican Party platform survey. Both of them, in a piece on the cow pie, attacked the Republican Party. Kevin Christensen accused the Wyoming Republican Party of a pay-for-play scheme. And for Bo's part, my guess is he didn't fill out the platform survey because then he would have to be held accountable to all of the things he did in the last legislative session. Very few of them were actually Republican. But I don't think that either of those two guys are actually going to win the U.S. House race. This one is probably going to iron itself out. And the same thing can be said for the rest of the state-level offices. On those, I think the state party should have left well enough alone. But again, the state does not get to tell a political party what they can or what they can't say. And the courts will explain that to them. Because this isn't unsettled law, my friends. In the Supreme Court case EU versus San Francisco County Democrat Central Committee in 1989, the United States Supreme Court struck down California's version of this law that prohibited political parties from endorsing candidates in primary elections. The court concluded that forcing political parties into neutrality violated both their freedom of speech and their freedom of association. Wyoming's law is no different. So the long and the short of this is that the government doesn't get to regulate political speech. Wyoming Statute 2225-104, the one we've been talking about this morning, is blatantly unconstitutional. Ultimately, the courts are going to make that clear. But just because a political party can endorse candidates doesn't mean that they always should. In fact, sometimes I think it's a bad idea. You run the risk of cronyism, which is something that just about all Republicans despise, unless, of course, you're a redcoat, but in that case, you're not really a Republican anyway. Parties should reserve their endorsements unless and until a clear distinction needs to be made. I feel the same way about news organizations. Though I understand the very long history of news outlets endorsing candidates, I don't really agree with it. I think that news organizations ought to call balls and strikes. And then, of course, have an opinion page. And here's the other thing about it. On this program, if you listen regularly, you'll get a pretty good idea of which candidates I like and which ones I don't. But I'm not going to be the person to tell you who to vote for. You can make up your own mind. And in my opinion, that's the way it should be. Well, that'll do it for today's installment of Weekend Update. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll talk again on Monday. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is the one and only Cowboy State Politics.